for learning about FAIR, for developing and sharing innovative best practices, and to serve as a platform and for networking with peers. He was supported in this effort by the author of FAIR, Jack Jones, the Institute's chairman, and industry representatives from companies such as Fannie Mae, Cisco, Bank of America, and Northern Trust. Outside of his volunteer work at the FAIR Institute, Nick is the CEO of RiskLens, a software company that has developed an enterprise platform based on FAIR and that acts as the Institute's technical advisor. Please join me to welcome Nick Sana.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very pleased to be here in Jordan to participate in this inaugural conference FAIR. Remember, you'll hear later on from Jack Jones, and he was speaking about some of these themes, that we're going to speak about today many years ago. And I remember sitting on a bench at the largest cybersecurity conference in the world, at the RSA conference in San Francisco, and telling him, what you have discovered because of a need in your enterprise is needed by everybody. And I bet that in a few years we'll tour the world speaking about these themes. And here we are, lowest point on earth, to speak about some of the new frontiers in cybersecurity. So very pleased to see this development. I want to thank all the sponsors that are listed here on the stage, and especially the National Cybersecurity Center here in Jordan for hosting this event. It is quite impressive that the Jordanian government wants to promote a risk-based approach to cybersecurity. That's at the forefront of best practices. This is not yet a reality even in the United States. It's just about to begin. The fact that in the Middle East we have authorities already on that journey is very impressive, and you should really consider supporting them and helping them and work as a system to push this forward. You see here on the title how risk economics can help us win the battle in cyberspace. You probably don't often hear about cybersecurity economics in the same word. As an industry, we've heard a lot about the technical challenges related to cybersecurity, the technical methods that cybercriminals engage, the technical methods that the nation state engage in trying to inflict harm or win geopolitical advantage. But we speak very little about economics. And that's a gentleman, Jack Jones, who is the chairman of the Institute, who will speak right after me. He invented this methodology to assess cybersecurity risk in economic and financial terms. And people around the world started coming, and following, this methodology to the point where it became an international standard. And I was very pleased even last night. I met for the first time Osama Salah, who is, in the United Arab Emirates, who was one of the few people in the early 2000s, meeting Jack Jones and having a discussion. How do we make this happen? How can we balance, the technical efforts we're having to secure organization with, the priority of running a business? How do we achieve this balance? And they found this FAIR model as a great way of doing this. And this discussion all over the world has grown to the point where the FAIR Institute now is a large organization with 14,000 members worldwide. We have, in the States, 50% of the Fortune companies have a member, at least a member at the Institute. We have 10,000 people trained on the methodology and 1,000 people certified, and about 25 universities worldwide teaching, courses in cyber risk management based on FAIR. This is just the beginning. To tell you, if you knew how many people work full-time at the Institute, it's very few people. But it's the community is drawing us to coming up with answers to the problem. And the FAIR Institute has grown to the point where the major publication in cybersecurity in the States recognize the Institute as one of the three most influential organizations in cybersecurity. And so to tell you the influence it has reached. The main principles we want to talk about today are based on a publication that has been very popular in the States, is now spreading out in the world, which is something I've been personally associated with, which is the Director's Handbook on Cyber Risk Oversight that has been originally published in the States by the National Association of Corporate Directors. These are an association of people that sit on boards. either, commercial companies or government organizations that have the responsibility of oversight of cybersecurity. And the reason we wrote this handbook was that for many years we had this illusion that board members, people in authority, leaders of companies and directors, leaders in government needed to learn cybersecurity. Like if they needed to become all engineers, cybersecurity engineers. How well did it work? Not very well. When you're in a board meeting speaking about cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, they look at you with eyes like this, it's like speaking another language. So we need to change, we attempted to change that equation by basically teaching the practitioners, cybersecurity experts, to speak their language, to speak the language of the business, to speak the language of government. And what is that language? Well, in government, it's national security, national economic development opportunities. In business, it's about earnings, it's about profits, it's about M&A, merger and acquisitions. That's their language. So it's our job to learn that language and explain how cybersecurity can influence those policies, can improve and support those initiatives, and make sure that we can support their strategy. So that's the goal of why we came up with the handbook. And the main principles, we will not go in depth in this principle because there's a session later on that we'll speak about it. I'm going to just touch on a few core principles. The first principle of this handbook is that cybersecurity is a strategic enterprise-wide issue, not an IT issue alone. It is an economical issue. And some of you are speaking at a table of people actually ahead of the game because for them it's obvious, but I can tell you, for most boards, for most, people in position of authority, it's starting to register that it's an economical issue, but it's a new thing. Until now, it's been treated like a technical issue that some people in IT have to do because we have this problem called, cyber attacks. But it's not been seen at the level of dignity of other economical and other business strategy issues. So that's the number one principle. The second one is, of course, because of increasing regulation and expectation from regulators, boards need to be aware and understand the legal implications and their responsibilities. They need to have access to cybersecurity expertise. Again, if they want to treat it as a business issue, they need to have access to the expert who can advise them properly. But I'm going to focus on principles 4 and 5 that actually I helped author, which is management needs to provide a cybersecurity framework. And this framework, like the Jordanian cybersecurity, national cybersecurity authority here, needs to have two components. A technical framework. In a technical framework, think about a list of best practices. And those best practices in the industry, for those who are more practitioners, are lists like the NIST cybersecurity framework in the US, NIST 153, the CIS 20 controls, the ISO, the International Standard Organization list of controls and best practices. Those can serve as a guide of best practices, but those alone are not enough. You need to also have a management framework where you can start treating cybersecurity as a business issue and understand the roles and responsibilities of various players in the organization to govern risk. To govern risk, to manage risk, not just an IT problem, it's a company-wide problem. And so we'll speak later on in the presentation how we can pair a management framework to a technical-only framework to better manage cybersecurity risk. And number 5 principle, this is also very important, is that management needs to start measuring, quantifying cybersecurity in financial terms. If you want the authorities, if you want the business leaders, if you want governments to take you seriously, I'm not speaking now to the practitioners, you must assess cybersecurity risk in a language you understand. And that language, that's a language of economics, that's a language of money. If they understand the bottom line impact, and they can compare it alongside with other impacts the organization faces from business initiatives, they will pay attention, and if it's material, they will want to do something about it. They will become your allies in fighting, cyber risk. And so it is time to adopt methodology like FAIR that we espouse, obviously, because it's the standard, that we authored, that can help you quantify cybersecurity risk and report to the board. Organizations need to start their cybersecurity teams, not just list of threats and vulnerabilities, which inevitably will be met with a yawn because it may be too technical to confuse with wisdom. But cyber risk needs to be assessed in financial terms. What is the impact on the bottom line? What is the impact, and are we doing enough in the face of that threat? What is adequate and what is not adequate in our specific context? Those are the questions that we need to answer. And last is, as already my, the head of the National, Cybersecurity Authority here, Jordan, already said, this is not just an individual organization issue. This is something we need to fight together. We need to understand the repercussion not only on risk of our organization, but also the potential ripple effect onto our, on our society. If we're a retailer and the data gets out of our customers get impacted. There's a societal impact, If we suffer some losses at a national cybersecurity level, many people potentially will suffer, and we as a nation will suffer. So we need to see ourselves as a piece, as a knot in the net that supports defense and cybersecurity as a nation, and collaborate and work together. And so we need to work as a system. So see that some of the principles, and this handbook has become very, very popular. And you can see here just evidence of publication have been translated in different languages. You see here the Japanese version, the English version, the German version. And I'm pleased to announce that the Arabic version is being translated, so you'll hear more about this today. And so you'll see the Arabic version of it coming out there very soon. I'm very, very pleased by that. And also this methodology has been endorsed by a lot of other industry players and governments. And so here you have just a list. I will not read it all, but give you a feel for, I need to add the Jordanian, cybersecurity, National Cybersecurity Center to this list, but has gotten a lot of resonance with a lot of industry and governmental, authorities. So now we establish a little bit of credibility around the handbook work. I want to speak about, one more piece about feedback that we've gotten from PwC. So we asked PricewaterhouseCoopers to audit the effectiveness of this handbook. And let's see what they basically told us. They say boards, as they read this, and again, this is the #1 publication that boards in US and more internationally are reading on cybersecurity. If there's one thing they need to read, is this handbook. And they see, they appear to be listening. We have seen, this is a 2022 survey, double-digit uptake in board participation in most aspects of cybersecurity. We saw a 24% boost in cybersecurity spending. That's a huge increase, a quarter increase in budgets. And so let's talk about some other phases of, of this problem, just to double-click on this point that the essence here is why, it's an economical issue. Is the infrastructure vulnerable? Absolutely, especially our digital infrastructure, especially when it's related to critical infrastructure. And, after all, the internet was built open to help us communicate and trade and do business better. And it's getting worse because now everybody carries their own device. Everybody can bring their own computer and work. We work remotely when you know what's behind the computer. There's more, challenges related to that. And I would say, is cyber alone in this problem? No. If you look at other industries, in water, food, and transportation, we face challenges as well. But certain industries don't get attacked many than others. And why is that? In some of those industries, there's not a lot of money, so they don't get attacked. Again, it's an economical problem. In the big scheme of it's an economical problem. Some industries are more subject to attack than others because of economics. The other problem we face is that the incentives are misaligned. I'm just going to more here to researchers, as wrote in this book, Economics of Information Security. They talk about this. Security failure, and I quote here, is caused at least as often by bad economic incentives as by bad technological design. Economists have long known that liability should be assigned to the entity that can manage risk. And you can see it everywhere. When you talk to business, especially people that write software to drive business, What is their priority? Is it to build secure application or to build fast or cheap? For most commercial organizations, it's fast and cheap. Security doesn't get a priority. So we have a misalignment of incentive. So that's oftentimes where the problems come, not just because of bad design. So we have an incentive problem, and this is exacerbated because by the fact that the cost of entry for cybercrime is very low. If you go on the dark web, you can buy a denial of service attack for $500. You can access any corporate mailbox for the major corporations in the world for $200. You can create a dummy, a fake banking website for less than $100. It is very, very cheap, and we need to realize that these players are becoming increasingly sophisticated. And they act like highly sophisticated businesses. They use advanced technologies and advanced business practices in cybercrime. If you go on the dark web, you'll find companies that look like big business. They have a nice website, they have products that you can buy to inflict harm. They have support. They have help desk. They have warranties, guarantee of returns. You don't get a return, in terms of cyber criminal profits, you give your money back. That's reality. That's happening out there. And the problem with that is that the cybercrime is relentless because you get away with it oftentimes. The chance of getting caught are very low, and the chance of making profit are very high, and so the incentive right now is stepped in their favor. So how do we deal with that? And so to deal with that, we need again to rethink our approach of cybersecurity from the economical point of view, and look at it from the point of view that, like FAIR and NACD, and I would say also the World Economic Forum do, where cybersecurity is no longer seen as just a technology issue. Yes, it is a technology issue, but it's a business issue. And so we need to understand, again, not only our legal obligation in this, we need to have access to the expertise, but we need to start mandating the assessment of cyber risk in financial terms so that business can get serious about it and government gets serious about it. And so I want to end my presentation with a few examples. And this is mostly directed to government. How can government help us in this fight against cybercrime? The first arena that I would suggest here, that we always suggested to the American government, and they're starting to listen about it, is to focus on education. When I started my work at RiskLens a few years ago, there were 500,000 open positions in cybersecurity. The number now is 3 million. 3 million open positions in the United States and not being filled. Private organization cannot find enough talent. Government cannot find enough talent. This is an economic problem. It's a demand and supply problem. The supply is not sufficient to meet the demand. And when this happens, also the salaries go up, and so it's even more difficult for organizations to hire cybersecurity experts and government to hire experts. So the problem is getting worse. So if government were to treat this is a major national menace as warfare, we would adapt, and probably it would be an intelligent thing to start building academies for cybersecurity, where you teach people the technical, elements in cybersecurity, but also how to manage cybersecurity from an economic perspective. And it cannot just be left to the private sector. And I think, like we did in the military, to defend ourselves, we built the military. We assign resources and budget to help our countries defend themselves against possible adversaries. If cyber risk has a national, security dimension, it's time to do the same thing. And start building academies, like we're building forces for the military, and provide incentives in the budget and the resource allocation to meet the demand and the needs that our countries require. I know that in Jordan here, there's already some, the King's University is already pushing the programs, but I think more can be done both here and many other countries, including in the States. The second policy proposal is that is about protecting critical information. Regulation is what? Checklists and more checklists and checklists, technical checklists. Some standards in the US is like 600 things you need to check. Set of best practices. Where I am talking to chief information security officers that tell me I'm spending 80% of my time checking boxes. My team auditing my system to see how well I'm doing. But those checklists are based on best practices. They are backward-looking, they are forward-looking. And so we're missing something in this dimension. Some of those checklists, by the way, they're not useful. Some of them are more useful than others because they can give you a minimum level of security, but they don't allow you to, they don't answer this question, how much risk do I have? In the face of a dynamic threat environment, how do we need to adapt? How do we apply resources? Where am I under provision? They don't do that. And all those best practices, we're speaking at the table as well. Which one in my particular context is it most important to protect my organization? We have a big prioritization problem. Those checklists don't help our prioritization. They can become busy work. And they can become really distractors from the threat that's happening today, maybe the most important one in my company or in my organization. So the call here is for governments to pair sets of best practices with good risk assessment methodologies. And I was very pleased, I was moved to see that the Jordanian, national cyber authority here is having a risk-based approach to cybersecurity. Checklist alone will make us continue to fail like we've done before. We need a risk-based approach where dynamically we can assess, see what risks bubble up, and adapt our action, our response to the new risks. And our defenses do that, which may mean that some items on the checklist may become a higher priority than others. So I hope that this was useful in changing our outlook from seeing cybersecurity, this is the mission of the Great Security, giving you the tools to help you look at cybersecurity no longer as a technical problem, but to look at cybersecurity as an economical problem. So we have a fighting chance to win the battle in cyberspace. And I would say, while fear is helping many private organizations already improving their best practices, and there's many sponsors here that provide solutions that are based on fear. I think it's time for governments to take this seriously and start adapting their policies and their regulations to support this effort, where technology is seen as how attacks happen, but the economics help understand why they happen and help us really sharpen our actions in our strategy in fighting against cyber risk. Thank you very much. Shukran.